And welcome to the chapter on the Alekhine variation. Very interesting and risky opening black plays. It's played a lot at the club level, but also some very strong players, including the world champions, sometimes like to surprise their opponents with it. After e4, knight f6 is the move that is called the Alekhine variation. Black is inviting us to push the pawn further with e5. Loses a lot of time sending the knight across the board. It goes to d5, then later it needs to spend one more tempo heading over to b6. And Black is hoping that our far advanced e5 pawn will prove to be a target for their play and undermine the e5 pawn later with d6. Now, the concept is very interesting and quite challenging, and that's why we have to know exactly what you're doing. But of course, sending the knight all across the board instead of developing other pieces is a very risky idea, and objectively, it's quite dubious for Black. Before we look at knight d5, I should mention the move knight g8. This is a very psychological system. Black, of course, is really playing with fire here, and it's played very often to provoke the opponent, because Black is not doing that badly here. But of course, going back and forth in the opening, it's not ideal. We follow up with a natural play d4, d6. We can play here f4 as well in the spirit of 4 pawns attack, which is what I would recommend against the main line with knight d5. But you can also just play knight f3 here. It's very good here. I look at two options, d, knight d5, knight d7. Now, very strong is queen f3 in this particular variation. And after knight d5, d, Black struggling to develop his king side. And after c6, I should mention queen d4 is losing to bishop b5 check. While after c6, there's a strong move queen c3. The queen is preventing all kinds of queen a5 and queen d4s. And then we'll develop the queen side. A very creative play, queen c3, knight a3. Knight is heading over to c4. But of course, it's not the only way, but it's just a very, very strong and creative way to punish Black. Now after e6, knight c4, the square is very weak. And so d5 is not a solution for Black. Bishop g4 is also too ambitious. Black lost a lot of time in the opening and develops the bishop before the knights. Not a good idea. After h3, bishop h5, g4. Of course, if Black just gives the bishop, we'll grab the bishop and have easy play. After bishop f5, however, we go g4, bishop g6, and e6. Thematic way to punish Black for his wrongdoings in the opening. After fe, very strong is bishop c4, d5, and bishop b3 is counterintuitive, I must say. But bishop not doing so badly here. More importantly, we keep the e-file open for castle rook e1 ideas. Black has got that issue on e5, and he is really not developed. After knight f6 castle, we intend rook e1 followed by c4. And if Black goes knight c6, trying to control the e5 square somewhat, then the bishop on b3 proves to be quite useful and heads over to a4. And yeah, this position is really, really bad. The bishop on f8 is just not coming out. We've got a full control of the e5 square, so not something I recommend for Black. Knight g8 is a very, very dubious line that shouldn't be played. Knight d5, on the other hand, is a main line and is a lot more interesting. We can go c4. Also possible to start with d4, but c4 first is the same thing. Knight b6, d4. I should mention here that should not remove d4. I was lucky actually not to learn it the hard way. In one of my bullet games, my opponent played knight to e3 here. And I was very, very surprised and took the knight. And then after he resigned, I realized the idea is that many players actually pre-move the move d4 because knight b6 is automatically played. And that's why he tried to catch me on that pre-move. Take my queen. But yeah, this is a risky one. So the only thing I should say is just don't pre-move here if you play online, especially online bullet games. Knight b6, we go d4. Black should go d6, undermining our e5 pawn. d5 has been once played by my good friend Erwin Lamy. I don't really know why he played it. It's not a great move. And after c5, knight d7, we are somewhat exposed here in the center with the pawn on e5, d4 and c5, all far advanced. But Black wasted so much time with the knight that I believe we are in a very good shape and in time to protect all our gains in space. After knight c3, Black goes e6, we can just play b4, and if b6, something like ruby 1, a5, a3, we managed to easily control our pawn chain here. Black lacks space and has bad position, while against knight c6 it's important not to take on d5 because of beautiful trick knight db8, regaining important d4 pawn. But if you just play bishop b5, stopping the b6 ideas, followed by a development of the king side, black has just has a very, very bad, potentially sort of a bad French defense, you could say. d5 not a good move, d6 is the one. f4, yeah, this is the 4 pawns attack, the most ambitious way of playing. Alternatively, of course, there are systems with e6. There are also systems with d4 and knight f3. But yeah, I recommend the more ambitious way. I feel this is the way to go here. And now we are in front of a big tabia. Black has a lot of different ways of developing. So let's look at them one by one. First, let's mention the move g5. It's almost a mouse slip, but it's not completely pointless. Black is trying to undermine our pawn structure this way, but of course this is way too risky. After simple knight c3, bishop g7, and knight f3, we can also play queen h5 first, but knight f3 is very strong. And knight f3, if g4, we can play knight h4, and yeah, black's expansion is led nowhere, and this king is going to be potentially very weak on the king side, with the g4 pawn being a weakness as well. G5 not a good idea, but you just shouldn't be shocked and should just keep making normal logical moves. G6 is a lot more to the point, and this is a setup that Magnus Carlsen chose in a pretty important game against Fabiano, some important rapid game. This is a lot more decent, but White still gets the advantage. We follow a game of Vasilij Topalov. He seemed to have been prepared and played very well here for a long time against the Bauer French player in the French League 2021. Topalov played knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3. Now the main move is bishop e6. Very clever idea, because if black castles first, then after c5, suddenly the knight on b6 is going to have to retreat, because it doesn't really have any other square. Important also that after dc queen d1, we can recapture on d1 with the rook. After knight 6 d7, knight f3, yeah, we're going to just crush with h4 h5, frankly. And black is unable to develop. He's got too little space. He's suffocated on the queen side. 7d is also pretty bad. After d, queen d1, rook d1, the endgame is just very superior for white. You've got more space, healthy development. c5 is coming, the knight on b6 is like squares as usual. So bishop e6 is the way. Black is preparing for all these c5 moves, because now he's got control of the c4 and the d5 square in some of the lines. So here, after bishop 6, I propose b3. It is also possible to play d5, which is pretty good, but I like the move b3. I think the way Topalov played is very good. Castle. DFE first is similar. C5 d5, it will most likely transpose to some similar positions as after b3 castle. Bishop e2, this is good. We don't play knight f3. The idea is that after bishop e2 takes c5 d5, we don't allow that pin with bishop g4, which would otherwise be an issue had the knight been on f3. So with bishop e2 first, it's a typical idea in these Alekhine positions. Now here, black should go bishop f5. If they take the e5 pawn after rook c1, the bishop is exposed to a knight f3 idea, and black lacks development. And after bishop f5, knight f3, we are going to start our attack on the king with the knight still on b8 after bishop d6, bishop h6, followed by some castle knight g5. And at some point, you will have to find the finishing tactic on your own. But black is not doing well. Besides the knight being on b8, his knight on b6 is also, that's really the dead piece. Like, it's completely dominated by our pawns. Black is just not doing well. The extra pawn is not felt at all. In fact, the open f file is only beneficial for us. So bishop e5 not good. Bishop f5 has been played by Bauer. Better idea. After rook c1, he finished development with knight e6. Knight f3, knight d7, bishop f4, and queen b8, trying to get to our e5 pawn. Here Topalov played attempting d6, which is not a bad move, but stronger is to sacrifice this pawn with castle, and after knight e5, strong move king h1. And it's really hard for black to unpin and he is in a big trouble. The only way to try to unpin is to go f6, and after knight e5, fe5, bishop g5. He's got a very ugly position. His knight is terrible, and just not good. So some accurate play is needed, as you had seen. So b3, then bishop e2 first, and this move rook c1. Very accurate idea as well. Tending g4 against knight d7. So some accuracy is needed, but if we show it, we will have an advantage. Now let's move on to ideas of bishop f5. If black plays bishop f5 without d takes e5, most likely it will transpose, but if black tries not to transpose, it could also backfire for black. After bishop f5, knight c3, e6, knight f3. If black starts with knight c6, we can already take on d6, cd6 and d5. To e-d-c-d knight before bishop b5, we develop the tempo and get a very good position. Bishop d7 takes knight d7 castle, bishop e7, and now knight d4, castle, bishop to we can play a3 first or bishop to a3 first, knight a3, knight a6, bishop e3, rook 8, queen f3 is my order. Now we've got a lot of space, beautiful position, knight setting to the juicy f5 square. If we need to chase the bishop from f6, we'll go g4, g5. Rook from a1 comes to d1 as well. A very good position. As I mentioned, the position is even worse than it looks. Indeed, it doesn't look so terrible for black, but the engines are really not happy here. So not something black should play. And again, if black tries to postpone this DE idea with 7 bishop e7, then we can also exploit that to our advantage. We play bishop d3, bishop g4, and now h3. And the idea is that after, let's say, check, king f1, it's no problem. The king will find eventually a safe place on g2. Bishop f3, queen f3, de. Now we can play de. So as you can understand here, this wouldn't work here because bishop d3, bishop g4, we would lose the d4 pawn. So that's how we can use the fact that black tries to be clever to our own advantage. And after bishop h4, king f1, bishop f3, queen f3, de, knight c6 now, very harmonious g3, king g2 setup. We've got a beautiful pawn chain, g3, f4, e5, and the bishop on d3 that could eventually land on e4 if needed. And we've got 2 bishops and more space and everything we want, and the king is very safe now on g2 as well, having artificially castled, you could say. So this clever bishop f5 move order doesn't really help black. Instead, we should take and now go for bishop f5. After the fe, there are also some sidelines. So there is this old move c5. Very important to check that, to know that, because it's very natural to try to undermine our pawns, but it just doesn't work. As computers pointed out. So after d5, if black goes e6, knight c3, e-d-c-d and c4, intending to develop the bishop to b4, we go d6, and our pawns are extremely far advanced, and of course they could be vulnerable, but the logic of the game is with us. It's black who has been playing very provocatively, who has been chasing his own knight all the way across the board, and so everything works for us here. And after knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop f4, we support our pawns with a natural developing moves as well. So it's always good, when you can, when you don't have to defend by moving the same piece a lot of times, but when you can develop naturally and at the same time defend against the opponent's threats. Here, black doesn't have enough counterplay. After g5, bishop g3, bishop g7, black trying to be clever, but after bishop e2, castle. Black still is unable to get rid of our strong d6 pawn, and he has played this move g5, which gave black some time to develop, but the f5 square is weakened, and one day a piece will land there, or we could use this diagonal perhaps at some point, or the weak h5 square. Just not a good position for black, so this e6 idea doesn't work. 7 g6 has also been played. Now we again just develop knight c3, bishop g7, bishop f4, castle, queen d2. We go for long castle, and after e6 long castle, our attack will come very quickly. For example, e-d-c-d, bishop g4, rook e1, c4. That's how they play. h3, bishop f5. Black has ideas. They want to bring the knight to c5, and if black were in time, there are some signs of queenside counterplay, but it's just not quick enough. After knight f3, knight a6, g4, and bishop d3 is what black has to play. Now we go d6, and knight b4 and a3, and after a5, black is hoping that we would take the knight, open his rook, and get ourselves checkmated, but of course we do not, and we just play bishop h6, focus on our own kingside play, go h4, h5, and black is actually struggling to create threats here. There is some sort of optical illusion of counterplay, but the knight on b6 is not on c5 where it should be, and queen is also not really around our king, and black is just unable to in a short time span create play, because if black tries to do it slowly, we will be much faster with h4, h5, and essential this typical takes, and queen h6 checkmate. So early c5, although very principled, it just doesn't seem to work. 6 bishop f5 is going to transpose to knight c6, bishop e3, bishop f5 probably. Let's see if there are some alternatives. Knight c3, e6, knight f3. Here, as the bishop is already committed to f5, we should play knight f3 first, keep the option of bishop d3 open. Now against bishop e7, we will transpose to the tabia after bishop e2, castle, castle. Now knight c6 first, or f6, bishop e3, knight c6. This will be looked at in a moment in the 6 knight c6 move order. If black tries the tricky 8 bishop before, now we have the option of bishop d3, because black didn't put enough pressure on the d4 pawn. We can afford this move, and after, for example, c5, bishop g5 is a strong tempo move, queen d7, and now take d5. We've got domination in the center thanks to our far advanced pawns, and we'll castle and just crush. We should in fact also be clever and more often than not punish them for that. Now let's head over to the tabia after knight c6. So move 6, bishop e3, bishop f5, knight c3, e6, knight f3. This is the main tabia, and bishop e7 is the main move, but there are also alternatives here. There are quite a few, so let's look at them. Knight b4 I think is not a good move. It's just rook c1, c5, bishop e2, bishop e7, castle, castle, a3. If knight c6 back, we've got d5, so black should take, knight d4, knight c6. Now we take on f5, ef. We've attained the bishop pair, and after c5, knight d7 before, we also got this beautiful majority on the queen side. Not a good position for black here, and not something he should go for. Knight b4, not a good move. Other moves are more critical, so bishop g4 is there. Looks very reasonable. After bishop e2, black takes on f3. We should take gf. Always watch out for the c4 pawn in these positions. It's a very important pawn, and it's important not to blunder it. Queen h4 check, bishop f2, queen f4. Seems annoying, but we've got the strong idea of c5. If knight d5, now we take, and queen d2. Get rid of this queen, and then push f4 in the endgame with the bishop pair. And if knight d7, then queen c1, even stronger than queen d2. So after queen c1, rook c1, the king is not on d2, not in the way of any x-rays. And next we want to push f4, and the rook will come to d1 to protect the d4 pawn again. And black knight on d7, that's the problem piece. And we've got the bishop pair after f4, bishop f3. Our bishop will be nicely unopposed. And so if you know this gf and c5, queen c1 idea, you're in good shape. Against bishop g4 setup. Another very, very principled idea is queen d7 long castle. Queen d7, bishop e2, long castle, short castle, and here they can try f6 or bishop g4, trying to stir up some mess in the center, but it all works for white. After bishop g4, we play c5. It's an important move to keep in mind. We shouldn't get a defensive mindset here and try to protect our d4 pawn, because it's difficult to protect it. Black is sort of threatening bishop f3 and knight d4, but instead we've got the c5 move, and black has to go knight d5, and things get very concrete. So here we take queen d5, and now king h1, a very strong prophylactical idea. So we'll see. Now the point is that after queen e4, so f6, we've got queen a4, by the way, thematic idea here as well. After f e bishop's hanging, if bishop f3, bishop f3, we get a strong bishop here on the diagonal. And if queen e4, queen b3, the sequence after knight d4, bishop e2, rook f4, knight e2, rook d3, of course, is the point. So rook f4, queen d3, knight e2, queen e2, rook f7. Important sequence, and now after rook d5, we have queen a4, and it's very important that queen e3 does not come with a check. And we can take the time to checkmate black with, I believe, queen a7. And that's for 11 bishop g4. Now 11 f6 has been also played. I faced this, by the way, a lot in my online practice. In general, this whole opening repertoire that I'm sharing here is something I sometimes play or play a lot in my training games as well. So I've tested this a lot, and yeah, f6 is played often now. d5 is very strong. After d5, if ed, we have bishop takes b6, followed by cd. There is this nice little tactic I noticed just now. I should have shared it. Rook f5, queen f5, bishop g4. And if d5, knight e5, knight e5, fe, now we start queenside play with a4, threatening a5, and after a5, knight b5. And we threaten d6, knight on b6 is very awkward and very weak. And if ed, again, we have this rook f5 tactic. So all works, especially this bishop g4, c5 is important. I faced that online as well. That's for queen d7. Now 9 bishop b4, bishop e2, and knight a5. This looks annoying, but there's no need to panic. We have strong move c5. It looks like black has all sorts of jumps on c4, but it doesn't really, because if knight c4, we have bishop c1 or bishop g5, and the knights are going to get confused there, and black is losing a piece. And if knight bc4, yeah, that's a strong sequence needed here. Queen a4 check, c6, and now bishop to d2, knight d2, and queen b4. And after knight f3, bishop f3, everything is protected. We managed to guard the pawn, and suddenly black is left with the knight on a5, which is absolutely awful. So that's for knight bc4, and if knight d5, bishop d2, yeah, castle. It's just a very good. I mean, here black can't even castle because knight d5, but essentially, yeah, black is just in a very poor shape. The same thing here is after castle. First castle, knight a5, and c5. Black has to take, and knight d5, bishop d2, and so on, and we threaten c4. So not a good sequence for black, but we have to know the c5 idea and not shy away from it. Knight bishop e7. Finally, the main move, castle, bishop e2. Sorry, castle, and f6. Black needs to undermine our pawn center. f6 is the only way to go. Ef, bishop f6, and now queen d2. Our d4 pawn is somewhat vulnerable, I have to say that, so we have to be quite careful about it. But we have other assets as well. Black has a weak e6 pawn, but what is even more important is the bad knight on b6. And even when sometimes the stuff gets traded in the center, the knight on b6 proves to be a bad piece. Here I look at few options. Now, if black goes, black usually goes for queen a7 followed by rook d8. If queen e8, we've got bishop g5. We can trade off this strong f6 bishop and get rid of some of the pressure on the d4 pawn. If h6, rook a1, and queen e8, we have a strong idea bishop f4. There is no obvious way for black to defend the c7 pawn, and after black does so with the clumsy move, I don't know, rook f7 or rook c8, we will go queen to e3, and our d4 pawn will be once again well protected. And this regroup of bishop f4, queen e3 served a great purpose of removing the queen from the x-ray and the d file. And if 30 queen e7, then we just go rook a d1, bringing all the pieces to the best squares, and after rook a d8, here a very important move, king h1. I believe it's the most popular move, or it used to be at least most popular move, is move queen c1. This allows a strong sequence by black, e5, d5, knight d4, knight d4, e d4, bishop d4, and now bishop g5, something that you can easily miss. After queen a1, knight a4. Black is creating all kinds of drama here with all kinds of threats, and black is able to equalize here. So it's important to play king h1 first, and here I wasn't able to find any good way for black to generate counterplay. Now, for example, if bishop g6 is played, threatening knight takes d4, because knight takes d4, e5 no longer can be met by knight takes f5. Here we can play queen c1, and after e5, d5, knight d4, take, knight d4, ed, bishop d4, bishop g5, queen a1. Now without bishop e3 check being an issue, black doesn't have enough counterplay. If knight a4, you have bishop g4. So important, yeah, after king h1, this whole thing works. After bishop g4, yeah, this is a very logical. Black is putting all the pressure possible on the d4 pawn, but we can play knight e4, bishop f3, and intermezzo knight f6, eliminating an attacker of the d4 pawn. After rook f6, strong move, gf again. Okay, it's pretty much a must to take with the g pawn because the c4 pawn again is there. So please don't blunder this stuff. This is like in blitz games or bullet games, it happens sometimes. People blunder the c4 pawn. Don't do that. Go gf. Don't worry. Black's got no bishops, so our king is very safe, and the g file will be used to our advantage. And after rook g1, yeah, the knight on b6 still dominated here by our c4 pawn and potentially b3 as well. If black waits with king h8, we can also continue waiting, h3, h6, bishop g1. Just useful moves, and we can play queen e3 now, getting rid of the x-ray here. Again, after bishop g6, queen c1 was important because knight d4 was already a threat. Yeah, after king h8 it is not. So this is the point. It's important to understand. h6 is the other waiting move. Again, h3, rook d7. I also tried bishop h7, queen c1, king h8, bishop g1, e5, but both d5 and c5, oh sorry, d5 and de give some advantage to white. Many play goes rook d7, which is the move that's been played by Naroditsky against Ray Robson in 2021 US Chess Championship. Here, Ray was well prepared to play the move queen c1, and yeah, black is not in a great shape. Rook d8 is met by d5, and then after we trade a bunch of stuff on d5, in the end there's going to be a pin on c4 with the bishop c4, excuse me. And if black plays king h1 first, king h8 first, excuse me, then we go bishop to g1, a typical prophylactic move. Bishop gets out of the way, tucked all the way back here on g1. After rook d8, now c5 no longer works because the spin is not anymore there, but we have now c5. It's always an important idea when you notice the black is pressuring the d4 pawn in a way where it's impossible to protect it comfortably. Then the c5 move always comes to rescue, because after knight d5, black blocks its own pieces from pressuring the d4 pawn. And now bishop b5 is nice, and black is unable to put any pressure on d4 and is stuck with less space and the weak pawn on e6. I believe that concludes our little look into a Alekhine system. It was quick, and I'm sure it could be confusing, especially, so do take your time to rewind and look at these variations. I have had a lot of experience in this system, I have to say, even though I'm a very experienced player and been studying openings for a long time. It is not easy to get the move order under control, especially in my quick games. I always need a moment to gather my thoughts together, and it is important here in this line to know your move orders. For example, if we go back here, it happens often, like already move 7 of knight c6, for example. If you go knight f3, bishop g4 already is a problem, so you start with bishop e3. And yeah, for example, in the lines where black delays knight c6, it's important here to not develop the bishops first, but develop the knight, because the bishop g4 would come at the loss of a tempo. So there is logic to that, but yeah, now after bishop b4 we have bishop d3. So there is logic to that, but you have to know your move orders here and understand why and when we play which move in the opening. But as soon as you do, once you got the move orders worked out and you play accurate in the opening, black does seem to be in a pretty poor theoretical shape in the Alekhine system. So that concludes the chapter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.